Laura, did you want to start with bowls?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Everyone would mute. This is creative also.
Thank you, Laura.
Welcome. I love that just as much as you asking me to do it.
Beautiful. All right. So as you read in the newsletter, we're coming upon our 54th anniversary as a ministry. And so we thought we've collectively been talking amongst ourselves and saying, why don't we do a legacy series of interviews of past and present members? And so Kari was kind enough to draft some questions to put Paula on the spot for our very first interview about Paula's book and the creative process of writing her memoirs. So Kari, if you want to take it away.
I'd be glad to. Paula, I am going to immediately put you on the spot and say, as by way of introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself pre-author. How did your life help you study to become a writer?
Well, part of my life, I had my own business as a geriatric case manager, and I started doing a lot of writing for court work. I would do an interview, do an assessment on an elderly person who was suspected of dementia, and I would have to go to help, or that they were in danger or whatever. So that was, the judges actually used to tell me I was probably the most creative report writer they had ever met, which kind of encouraged me. It shouldn't have, but it did. So, and again, as a nurse, you note take, you write about what's going on with your patients. But even as a child, I did a lot of reading. I used to write stories, short stories. I even wrote a manuscript for a TV show called The Monkeys, which they used. I never got credit for it, but they did use it. Yeah. So, and that was only 15 then. So I guess it's always been in there. And being Irish, we love to tell stories. So that's sort of what prepared me. It didn't prepare me for the emotional roller coaster I went on during that particular journey, but the rest of my life prepared me for that. My family of alcoholics, dysfunction, um, my first marriage, which was to an alcoholic and dysfunctional. So I was good at dealing with the emotions that came up in my life.
Thank you. As a fellow author, yeah, family can set you up to learn how to tell stories for fun and survival and just to get stuff out. So it's nice to be able to rechannel those things like you have.
Mm,
So the obvious next question is tell us about your book.
okay.
And do
When
you have
I
a
had
copy?
what no, I don't. I had one, but they're all out in the car, and Matthew just took off with the car. So anyway, it's got a bright orange cover, and it actually is in several libraries here in southeastern Connecticut, which I am honored that they would be able to do that for me. But anyway, where was I going with that? I'm having a moment here. Excuse me. Basically, in 2020, I ended up in the hospital and had to have an emergency triple bypass. And after that, a new guide came in within 6 months, a fellow I never met, but I knew through other people. And he said, okay, you've got your second chance on life. You've got another 20 years. Don't waste it. There's enough people died. You can write your book now. And that was my joke for years. People always said, oh yeah, it's such an interesting life. You should write a book. And I said, yeah, too many people have to die. Well, apparently, according to the spirit world, enough of them had that I could write my book. So I started. Didn't get very far because I had complications, emotional complications from the surgery. I was afraid I was going to die if I fell asleep. Weird stuff. But the spirits helped me get through that. And so I started writing the book. I found a publisher through Kathleen McGowan, strangely enough. There we go. They got my book. That's my book, Out of the Victim Box, One Woman's Journey to Heal Childhood Sexual Abuse. And I put my RN at the end of it because it gives me more credibility. So it's basically a story of how the abuse happened. It's a little graphic in that first couple of chapters, but they were necessary. And some places have actually refused to sell it for me because of that. But I have to understand that it's not for everybody. And it makes some people very uncomfortable. So it's like, okay, fine, But the funny thing is, the two people that I have asked to sell it in their facilities have kept the book. So I'm hoping that they pass it along. And so it tells not only my story, but actually, and this is not for publication, but there's a story of one of my sisters in there. She gave me permission. And it's just how sneaky and tricky evil can be for children, and how it's easy to convince a child that they have no power, and that if they tell anybody about the abuse, either they will be hurt or their parents will die. And because children believe adults are always right. We're brought up that way, or we were in the 50s anyway. So I went through some of the stories, how different women I know reacted. And one of them I call Vivian the volcano. She reacted by stuffing everything, and when she couldn't stuff anymore, violence would happen. She would kick in doors, she would have temper tantrums, she would break things. And I sort of gave a little bit of how she made some very bad choices through her life, but by making good choices, she is now very happy. She has a wonderful man in her life who's very supportive, and she's got a great life. So that's what I used, those kind of positive things. I talked about how counseling helped, my relationship with my counselor, who's the mother I always wanted. She was a wonderful woman, bless her soul. She's on the other side, and I'm sure she's still watching over her Paula, as she used to call me. But one of the things she always said to me was, you know, you can be as stubborn as a mule when you don't want to get something, but when you get it, you run with it. And that's what I love about you. And I never forgot that. So that helped me get through my divorce, everything I went through after my divorce, all the jobs. I've had a lot of jobs. My ex-husband's aunt used to say, you know, there's something wrong with your wife. She has no sticky stuff on the bottom of her feet, because I went from job to job. But when I felt my job was done or I got bored, I went and looked for another job. So all of those jobs actually helped me become who I am. Um, the business taught me a very serious lesson. I almost lost everything I own because I let my ego take over. Um, Fortunately, I had two very good lawyers, and I didn't lose everything I own. So I don't think I put that in the book, but that's just an aside. Um, so the book is basically, you know, the final chapter is my own special fairy tale of meeting my husband, Matthew, um, falling in love with him, our life together. Are we perfect? Hell no. Do we argue? Yeah, but because we both had such horrendous life experiences, we pick our battles very carefully, and we very rarely argue or fight about anything. And when we do, it's a real serious issue, and we work it out. Um, Mostly because I hammer on him because he's a tendency to be a clam. So, but he is my blessing. His name means blessing from God, Matthew, and he is and has been and probably always will be, um, the blessing in my life, because through this writing, through the emotion I went through, he was always there to hold me when I cried, to encourage me when I wanted to quit. And then Sally and Shirley also were always there for me. I would run things by them, and usually Shirley I would cry on, and she'd say, but you got to get it done. You know, you've got to get it done. It's the thing that's going to free you. And just before I did get it done, I had a reading at the Spiritualist Church camp, from a British, psychic, who said that finishing the book would be my final chapter in my therapy, and I would be free. And he was absolutely right, because once that book was published in December of 23, I have become a different person. I was able to fully leave nursing behind, even though I quit years ago, because I quit just before my surgery. I was actually able to let it go, and let go of all the guilt that I carried about a million things that we all carry guilt about, um, you know, and was able to develop my psychic ability even better. Um, so that's what the book is about. My statistics, which a social worker I know helped me with. Um, but it's pretty much giving women hope that there is a way to stop abuse. There's a way to protect your children. You can't protect yourself because it's happened, but you can let it go. You can become free again. Um, and most importantly, to protect children of all sizes, shapes, and ages from this terrible thing, because it does affect your entire life. And most people just sort of brush it off like, oh, well, it's just something you got to get over. No, it's not something you get over. It's something you carry. And even my therapist said, it's never going to completely go away. It will sneak up on you occasionally when you're not even looking. But it's the important thing is how you react to it. If you can learn to say, I'm sorry, you need to leave, you no longer serve me, you will save your life and you will be able to live and be free. And that's my message um, to women and men, because there are the big controversy with the church proved that happen to men too. It's not just us girls that had that happen too. So that's my message. You can be free.
I can certainly verify that, especially your first book does feel very much like a pregnancy. It feels like it grows and gestates, and it's taking things away from you, and it can be exhausting. And then when it's out, it does just feel like, okay, this is past and it's in the world, and it is on its own journey now, which is a very interesting thing to watch. So I'm so pleased to hear that you've had that experience. And I do have my own copy, and someone the description on the back, which I'll read.
Thank you.
Oh, I was pleased to be asked. In Out of the Victim Box, Paula Goldman brings a much needed gentle voice of support and a guiding hand out of what can feel like an impossible to escape trap. Through her own stories and knowledge, along with other experience of healing and recovery, Paula shows a path forward out of the darkness of abuse. Everyone still must take their own steps, of course, but this book and Paula's generosity in sharing her life provide both a starting point and a glimpse of the peace that is possible on the other side. So
And I
that,
thank you.
oh, my pleasure,
I
certainly.
thank you for that. That really impressed my publisher, and it impresses most people who actually do, because my husband's right. Most people look at the cover, but the first thing they do is flip over, see what's written on the back,
Mhm, mhm.
and that
Right.
really grabs people's attention. Um, but it's also what made two places say, well, it's a little too controversial for what we want. But as I said, they kept the book. So
Mhm.
Um, and one of the people who kept the book, I know her niece was molested um, because I knew her mother. Her mother worked for me for several years, and her mother had a nervous breakdown over it. As a matter of fact, the child doesn't even speak to her mother, which is really sad. So I'm hoping they leave it around and her niece actually gets a chance to read the book. And they're like, oh, she'll never read it. And I said, leave it under her nose. She just might.
Mhm.
So thank you for that wonderful thought at the back, because I couldn't wait to put that on the back of the book. I said to her, you are putting this on the back of the book. Because Shirley's main comment was, I sat up all night, read it, and cried. That's not going to really encourage anybody to read it. Anyway,
It,
next question.
one thing I will say is one thing to keep in mind as we are writing, whether it's a memoir or fiction or history, whatever it is we're not writing for every single person. Not every single person is going to be interested or willing or able to receive what we're saying. You know, if I'm writing I don't write police procedurals, but if I did even dip my toe into that, I'm not writing for a 50s things. That's not
Right.
my audience. Or if I'm writing some sort of science fiction and you happen to be an expert in that, or if a story I write touches on a fear or an experience or a trauma, you're not the audience. So that's one way to let your creativity be free, is remember it's not for everybody. That's very important. And I was going to say something else. Anyway, um, so you mentioned Matthew helping you continue to write the story? Was there anything else that kept you going? Was there, did you have a specific person in mind that you wanted to share this with? Because you are completely right. One statistic about print books is they are shared repeatedly. One print book might be read by 5 or 6 people, and that
Right.
really can bring about. So anybody that passes by it might see it 5 or 6 times before they finally think, you know what, today's the day I'm going to pick this up. So was there any specific thing you had in mind like that when you were writing that kept you going through that slog in the middle?
Um, it was a lot of it was my spirit guides helping me out too. One in particular, Blake, who's the one that told me I had 20 years not to waste it. Um, it, every time I got discouraged, I would meet somebody who needed the book. So it was like spirit was kicking me in the butt saying, yeah, you got to get this done. When I did get it done, I used to carry a little paper with me that had the information about the book, and spirit would tell me when to give it to somebody. And I was in the hospital getting signing in for a mammogram uh, last year, and spirit just said, you got to give it to this woman. So I said to the woman, if you know anybody who might need this book, would you share this? And she read it and tears filled her eyes. And she went, oh my God, how did you know? And I said, excuse me? She said, my 7-year-old daughter, I just found out this happened to. She goes, how did you know? And I just, I don't even know where this came from. I just smiled and went, I'm a bishop. I got connections. And she laughed. It was just like, huh? I don't know. I've had women come up to me and say, we are so blessed that did not happen to us, but we have friends we know that's happened to, so we will tell them about your book. I shared it. I went to Kappa is my writers association in Connecticut. We went to their 30th anniversary party, basically because I wanted to meet another woman who had written a similar book. We had done an article in our newsletter together at the same time, and I didn't know her because she's from the other side of Connecticut. So we ended up being the only 2 people who danced to this 60s and 70s band. And then this young couple came out and they started dancing. So at the end of the night, we finally got around to introducing ourselves. And I said, oh, my name is Paula. What's yours? She said, Melissa. And I went, what's your last name? So she told me. I said, oh my God, you're the one I came here to meet. And she laughed. And so her husband and my husband started talking. We started talking. We ended up in the parking lot for an hour and a half talking about our books. So we swapped books and promised to keep in touch. Well, I just heard from her. She belongs to an international reading book, and she just read from my book, not her own book. She read from my book to this international group, and she said, hopefully that will bring you some more clients to buy your book. And I'm like, thank you. You just don't know. You just don't know. I went to a book show that was supporting something we called United Services here in Connecticut. They're a service that helps women in these situations and other situations. And met the woman who ran the place. And she said, do you do speaking? And I said, yeah, I will. Why? So she said, well, we're nonprofit. We couldn't pay you much. And my husband pipes up. He goes, if you let her sell your books, you don't have to pay her anything. She was on that. I'm waiting for a call from her because they have their big meeting in October and she wants me to be the speaker. My husband is all about getting out there, selling your books, doing it. Not me. Because I know spirit will get that book wherever it needs to go. And the person who has the book will share it with somebody who'll share it with somebody. A lot of my author friends have a real snit about, well, buy your own book. I don't care who reads it or who bought it. Just get it out there to the people who need to hear the message of hope. And that's what my book is all about, hope. And knowing that you don't have to live in fear for the rest of your life and carry that awful thing that happened to you, but was never your fault. But because we believe it was our fault. 5 years old, what kind of a fault could you have? But you don't think like that when you're a child and when you're growing up. And you always think you're different. You never feel like you belong. Um, have I gotten over that? Not completely, but I've found ways to fit in wherever I go. Witness the art gallery where I am kitchen goddess once a month when they have their opening shows. Um, I have no problem fitting in with any group because now I know I'm just as good as anybody. And I don't know what secrets they're holding in their hearts either. So, do I talk about my book? Yep. I talk about the ministry. There are some people who want to think about joining the ministry, so that's good too. But yeah, I've been blessed. I've been blessed because it has set me free. And now I don't completely consider myself what I always used to consider myself. I am a free spirit. I am a painter now. Will I ever write another book? I doubt it, but I don't know. I might start writing short stories because that seems to be what I do best. But now that I can paint, I may actually paint and illustrate my children's book and get that one published, that I wrote in 1976. So who knows? I don't know where I'm going. That's in Spirit's hands right now.
Well, I will always encourage anyone to write short stories because they're so much fun.
They
And
are, and you don't have to think a lot.
exactly. And things that they can go together. If you might have a painting that inspires you to write a short story, or a short story might inspire you to paint. And I love the idea that by writing this, you redefined yourself.
Mhm.
You redefined how you see yourself personally, and also how you present yourself to the world. And I think that's wonderful. That's something an act of creativity can do, is we dig in and find what might need to be tossed out and just gotten rid of, or we find a seed that has been ignored that needs a little bit of sun and light, or we may just find a whole new person that we didn't even realize was there, but it's all rooted in that original person who we were meant to become. So that's lovely. And I think you raise a very important point, that being told that it's your fault, that you can't do anything about it, that you have to stay in that victim box, no matter how small and cramped it gets. That's one of the most important messages of this is, no, I am in charge of me. I can make these decisions. You might have been in charge of me when I was too young to know better, but now I'm in charge. And I think that's vitally important. I think it's one of the most uh, revealing and healing parts about this book. So I'm so thankful you shared it. You've actually you got a whole lot of the questions I was going to ask just naturally in the flow, which I'm very happy about. One last thing I will ask you um, is there is there anything that really surprised you in the process of writing the book, seeing it published, and sharing it with people? Anything that you just thought, wow, I didn't expect that you learned or experienced?
I think writing my own personal fairy tale, which was the last, it surprised me that my relationship with my husband for granted with him. Um, and just because our life has been smooth, uh, yeah, we don't make millions and we live in a trailer, but we got a good life. And I think that helped me realize that and project that more, um, to people, because I had always seen myself just as a nurse. and a victim. And letting go of both of those, because perfectly honest, I never really wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be an actress. And my parents laughed hysterically when I told them that and said, you better be a nurse because at least you pay your bills that way. Again, it was nice to feel free to be who I was and say who I was, who I really am, and to be able to take that burden off of my soul and say, no, I don't need to carry you anymore. And the image on the front page of that book, the woman climbing out of the box, that was actually given to me with the title by another spirit guide. And as soon as I told Sally Dwyer, she drew it right there. We were at Shirley's house one day and I told her about it and she drew it and I went, yeah. And my publisher gave me such grief. And I said, listen, that's what I did. That's where I was. That's where so many people are. They need to get out of that box. Yeah, you can see outside, but you can't get outside until you find that ladder. And that ladder is getting to know yourself, getting help, because you can't do it alone. But the other message is it's hard work and you have to do the work. Nobody can or will do it for you. And I think that's was the surprise, is that, yes, I did it, but I had a lot of really good help. And a lot of that help came from people in this ministry. So I am triple blessed. And I knew almost 20 years ago when I met Charlie in particular, that I had found my tribe. So thank you again, Charlie, for that wonderful hour chat we had in Arizona. When I didn't even know who you were, you just sat down and talked to me. And it was like, yeah, I found the people where I belong. And I heard that talking to Katrina and Caitlin this week, that they have found their tribe. So I am pleased to say, then hopefully on October 6th, we will ordain both of them, one in person and one on Zoom. So, that's another piece of who I am, is this ministry, because I believe in it. I don't ever want to see it fail because you're all too good. And you're all very supportive. And so that helped me get that book done too, is the support from you guys. Just let me babble some days and I appreciate that because I just needed to babble. So thank you all. And now it's let me be free to be the painter I am now, however long that lasts or whatever. Yeah, it's who I am now. And the book helped me realize that I have been different people at different phases in my life, and that was okay. And some of it is a writer, and some of it is a crazy person, and some of it's the kitchen goddess at the gallery. But it
I
was
think that's, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I think one thing about all of us, and I believe particularly writers, is we contain multitudes. We have it's all the voices in our heads in a positive way is what
Right.
lets us tell the stories. So I think that's very important. And just so, in case anybody has it on a different view, this is the image that Paula was talking about. And one thing I want to point out is you, by writing this book and getting your story out, are helping people learn how to build the ladder, and you're holding the ladder, and your is very appropriate. So
Right. And those things on the walls and stuff are all the lessons that she learned and could leave behind. And the doll on the floor is my alter ego, the redhead. And she is my childhood I've been able to leave behind. She can have the ladder. I don't need it anymore. I'm out.
Mhm.
So, yeah. It was quite an experience. And it was heart-wrenching in some places, but it also helped me stop blaming my parents because they never knew. When we tried to tell my mother, yeah, she didn't want to hear it, but her mother was dying at the time, so I had to learn to forgive her. And recently, she actually came to me through a psychic and apologized for not being the mother that I needed. But she was happy that I had found other mothers to take that place. So that was a great message. So, yeah.
I think that is another important part about growing up is, I mean, some of our guardians and parents can be monstrous. And also, generally, they're doing the best they can. Generally, they're doing the best they can with what they've got. And what they've got is often flawed and damaged too. But we can hopefully move forward in a more clean way. And again, show people that they can make that change and show people a different way to parent, a different way to lead, a different way to care for people. I think part of that is exposing our own vulnerabilities and saying, hey, you can walk through this. So very beautifully said. And of course, the important final question is, where can people buy your book?
It's on Amazon, or they can buy it from me. Either way. I think I've sold all of 10 copies on Amazon, but I've sold 25 copies by myself. So if you know somebody who needs it, give them the name of it, pass it along. I appreciate it. It's not about the money for me, because some of that money is coming back to the ministry. Again, because of the support I've gotten here. So yeah, if you know somebody who could benefit from it, tell them. Again, when they're ready, they'll read it. Half of my family has not read it because they don't want to know. But that's fine. That's, you know, and again, I have taught my sisters over the years that, our parents only had the references they had growing up, and they grew up in a very different world than we did. And we also discovered, well, psychically, several of us have discovered that our mother was molested as a child, which is why she couldn't deal with what we were trying to tell her. So again, you have to forgive her for that. She did the best she could do with the information that she had. And, as B always says, she really believes no matter what's going on, people do the best they can do. And you can't blame your parents for the rest of your life for what your life is, because you have choices. As a child, no, you don't. But as a grown-up, you have many choices. And if you continue to make bad choices, you will continue to pay the consequences for those bad choices. Making good choices and changing your life, and again, you have to do it, nobody's going to do it for you, is the only way you're going to have a good life, is because you choose. Did I make a lot of bad choices in my life? Hell yeah. Some of them were fun, especially after my divorce. Some of them were fun. And some of you heard about those, and we'll keep them under your hat. But, especially since Matthew was the best choice I ever made in my life. And it was purely by accident that I met him. So it wasn't really accident, spirit was guiding. So make better choices. We all have choices. And now that you know you got choices, make them.
Thank you so much, Paula. This was fascinating. A real pleasure to me, because I remember when you started this, and just so it's a huge deal to finish a book. It's huge. So I'm so proud.
Nobody knows better than you. Yeah.
But that's been through a lot of support and help from other people as well. I don't think none of us are self-made. People say that, but none of us are. We all have support and help along the way in some manner. And with that, this group, if anyone has any questions for Paula, now would be the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kari.
If you have a question, just go ahead and unmute.
I'm interested, Paula. Have your dreams at night changed at all since writing this book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have that terror stalking me at night anymore, which I had for many, many years. I have more positive dreams. I still have a few scary ones once in a while, but no. But thank you for asking that. I hadn't thought about that at all. Yeah, my dreams have improved. They're brighter, more colorful. They used to be strictly black and white with something following me or chasing me. So thank you.
So, Paula, the question I have, as you know, when we met, I'm always delighted to know what drives somebody into our ministry. And,
Mhm.
so that's a good question right now. What propelled you to join?
Basically, I was searching because like you, I was brought up Catholic and I became very disillusioned with the Catholic Church long before the other stuff came out. Number one, because I always wanted to be a priest, and they told me I could only be a nun. Secondly, I was searching for my spiritual soul, which I thought had been stolen for reasons of the book and the church. And when Red Basket got ordained and started talking about the ministry, I'm like, that sounds interesting. So then Sally got ordained, and I'm like, that's interesting. And they both talked to me quite extensively and said, why don't you think about joining? And I hesitated for a long time because I don't like anything that smacks of religion. And it still sounded a little religious because especially at that time, we called ourselves a church with no walls. And I wanted nothing to do with anything that had anything to do with the church. But when I was ordained and then reordained in Sedona, when I met you and Jenny and Terry and Bobby and Mo and Shirley, I mean, it was like, oh my God, these people, they get it. They got what I'm looking for. And it started with my conversation with you at the coffee bar, you just asking me who I was and why I was there. And that just brought me such joy. I think I cried through my whole ordination. And Margaret Hedden, I remember she looked at me and she goes, I don't care what your name is. I'm going to call you Sister Margaret Mary because you have that nun persona. And I went, no, I have the Mother Superior persona. She laughed. So for years, she's called me Sister Margaret Mary. But she came over to me and said, I want to be the first one to ordain you. And I never stopped crying through the whole ceremony. It's all I remember is that I had two handkerchiefs and they were both soaked at the end of the day. But that weekend was so amazing. I met some people. I actually ended up in that, what was that? Watsu tub, Nikki?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. With a young woman named Jane. And I said, I don't have a bathing suit. And she said, I don't either, but it's dark and there's nobody looking. Let's take our clothes off and jump in. And we did. And that's the first time I ever did anything like that in my life. Just talking about what we wanted to do with our ministry. And I never saw her again. I don't know if she disappeared off the face of the earth or what, but that whole weekend was just so amazing. And in the middle of it, I developed an allergy to the cleaning products in the hotel I was staying in. I was sick as a dog. But it was the best weekend because I finally found my tribe. And I thank you all. And Nikki, I think I even met you that time too, because you were still
Yeah.
running that temple, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, that was an amazing, amazing weekend because it was the end of that search in my life for finding spirituality instead of religion.
So Paula, thank you so much for taking over the reins of our organization, really, because you have such a down to earth way of expressing life fully, wholly, and completely. But the other thing is, there's a lot of prejudice against organized religions. So please make sure we're never organized.
You can be assured that's Nikki's job. That's why I need Nikki. I am the least organized person, and you don't want to see my house because this is my dining room and it looks like a painter's palace. So there's no organization. Well, I can't say that because I know where everything is in my piles. So that's my organizational level. My nurse's aides used to go crazy when I ran Stone Ridge because they'd say, "You got this stuff on your desk. I gotta file it." And I said, "Don't you touch it. I know where everything is in that pile. Don't you move it." Uh, so yeah, I will make sure we are never considered
Thank
organized,
you.
except with what Nikki has to worry about, bless her heart. So yes, and thank you for allowing me to be your leader at this time. It won't last forever. But
We're more alike than I thought because I keep everything in piles and I know exactly what's in.
good, I don't feel so bad. And you're a painter too, and you were a painter long before I was. But yeah, I have a story about my.
I'm a priest.
I wanted to become a priest. I did.
Yeah,
I
we
really did.
thought they were the closest thing we got.
Well, I don't know if I thought that. I just thought I could make a difference in people's lives, which is what I did as a nurse. So I guess I was sort of a priest a long time ago, but just never got ordained until I met you folks.
So certainly throughout the ages, we've taught that the temple of God is within ourselves. And we honor that temple through service, whatever that service we choose.
Mm-hmm. And I have actually started thanking people for their service. I shocked the heck out of my dentist. I have a new dentist, a very young new dentist who's absolutely adorable. And I said, "Thank you for your service and thank you for putting up with me as a patient because I know I could be a pain in the neck." And I said, "Thank you for explaining everything to me," because most dentists just go and do their thing. This guy explained every step of what he was doing when he was filling my tooth, which I value. He said, "Well, a lot of people don't want to know, you know." I said, "Well, I'm not one of them." He said, "I will file that in my file." So it's it's getting to be a habit with me, thanking people for everything they do, even the checkout person at the grocery store. What I've discovered is the people who greet you and say goodbye in Walmart all have name tags on. I always address them by their name and thank them for their service and wish them well and tell them to stay safe. And they light up. People are amazed that you can read a name tag and you know how to use it. Because most people just, it's like a waitress, you know, just another waitress. Well, I always ask my waitress her name wherever I am, and that shocks them too. But to me, that's my way of sending my light out into the world and letting people know I appreciate. I tip less the ones that aren't so great, but most of the waitresses I encounter are great because I always ask them what their name is and have a little chat with them before I order my dinner. Um, so I think it's those little things that I've learned um, to send out into the world to let people know they're appreciated no matter what they're doing. Because we all need that. We all need to know we're valued. And I spent so much of my life not being valued and fighting that, that I think this is the part of my life. And again, the book has freed me to do that, to see beyond my nose, and actually look at people when they provide a service. Because how many of us never look at a waitress? Do you ever really know what your waitress looks like? Not a lot of people do. I always find one characteristic, like, oh, she's the one with the ponytail, or she's the one with the pretty eyes, or she's wearing glasses. And it drives Matthew nuts. It's like, how do you know that? I don't know. I just do. My mom was like that. She might not remember your name, but she could remember things about you, uh, that made you feel special.
Along that line, something I like to do is cashiers, secretaries in doctors' offices, waitresses. I always find something to compliment them on.
Great. Yeah.
You know, oh, I love your hairdo. Oh, your nails are beautiful. I like to do that. I just think that it's a nice thing to do.
It also tells them that you took the time to look at them
Exactly. I
for
see,
who they,
I see you.
you see you. Right. I see
You're
you.
not just a worker. I appreciate you and I see you. And that was a question that I was going to ask, but you kind of already answered it. Was I often wonder, I have several friends from 12-step programs that have similar experiences, and I often want to ask them, do you think your mother knew what was going on?
I
I
think
don't, I even asked my daughter, has anyone ever inappropriately touched you? Because I never noticed, and I know the mothers, they say, I really didn't know.
most mothers will say they didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
That when they found out, they were horrified. And, my friend Katie actually had a nervous breakdown about it when her daughter was about 10, because she discovered it somehow. She never told me how, but it just destroyed her. I was at her parents' house giving her Reiki twice a week just to keep her from trying to kill herself again. That's how it destroyed her. So, but her daughter still doesn't understand that it wasn't mom didn't protect you, is she didn't know. The
And
only
I
one
have
that,
one mother
pardon?
and one mother that I talked to, she was actually a hospice client, and she was daughter's home because daughter was trying to reconnect with her before she passed, because that had happened to her, was her father, and the mother knew, and she didn't do anything about it. And when the daughter got pregnant at 13, she went to the police station and reported both of them, and they both went to prison.
Wow.
And today she has a relationship with her father. She's worked through it. She's done therapy. She's a big Richard Dyer fan. She has all his books, and she's done a lot of work. And I thought that was pretty courageous to bring her mother into her home as she
Yeah.
was dying, and took wonderful care of her because she wanted to rekindle that relationship. That
That's
was
great.
really interesting. I wrote that one down in my journal book about that whole story. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's a good forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's a good example of forgiveness. There's a journalist here who wrote a story called uh, uh, When the Sister Finally Told an Aunt, and the aunt confronted the mother. The mother's answer was, what can I do? I don't have any skills. I don't have any money. I don't have any power. and everybody loves my husband. Nobody would believe me anyway. There is nothing I could do. He also used to beat the crap out of his wife, as well as this daughter that wrote the book, he never touched for some strange reason. So she wrote the book, and the book is extremely graphic in some places, but also very sad when she talks about her mom, that her mom just felt so totally powerless. And the only person this man was ever afraid of was one of his sister-in-laws, and she used to take him apart. And she was the only one that was able to get the daughter away from the family. Unfortunately, the daughter ended up in a mental institution and died there. So yeah, a lot of women, even though they, especially in the 50s, mothers didn't work a lot in the 50s.
Right. They're home.
So they have no power, they have no control, they have no money. So what are they going to do? They're going to send their husband to jail?
Right.
Is their family going to take care of them? I mean, that's exactly what was going on in those days. And I'm sure a lot of the people who have been molested since I was a child were in the same position.
Mhm.
But
And
it's not
that was
just
his mother's answer was, I was afraid.
right.
That was her only excuse was, I was afraid.
I was afraid. I couldn't. Now, my grandmother, on the other hand, did catch my grandfather grabbing me and threatened him with an inch of his life if she ever caught him touching one of her grandchildren again. And through reading the book, my sister Sue, who was the one we totally protected because she was the third one down, had a flashback of him trying to molest her, and my grandmother coming in and saying, "Get off his lap and never get on his lap again." And she just looked at my grandfather. So she would, once she got it, she was on guard all the time, but she wasn't with us all the time that he was there. But she was the only one so she's the only woman I ever trusted was my grandmother, because she helped me stop it. She actually gave me permission to tell him, no, I don't want to play your games anymore. And my sister Maureen too. So we were able to stop it, but only because we knew we could have gone to her if he continued, which we never had to do, because then she ended up with a brain tumor and he died of pneumonia, I think. So, but again, we were already teenagers by the time she figured that out. And it was way too late. He'd been molesting me since I was 5. So, but yeah, you can't always blame your mother, and whether my mother really knew or not, I don't know. We just figured it out that her grandfather probably molested her because she had to live with one of my aunts for part of her life. And then suddenly she was moved to another household of friends of the family who actually raised her. So that kind of set a few red flags off there. Like, oh yeah, I'll bet Jaju got to her. And so she couldn't tell anybody. She never dealt with it. So why could she deal with us and ours? So that helped with the forgiveness process, I think. And again, if you feel powerless, how can you be powerful for your children? You can't, really.
And this woman is a wonderful mother and grandmother too.
Yeah.
She's great.
Mhm.
I admire her, really.
Well, I've had a few.
I did the Mother's Memorial Service.
Yeah.
And I got everyone in a circle at the end because it was at the grave site.
Mhm.
And I had to hold hands with that father. And I was
Ooh.
a little creeped out by that. But she could forgive him, I could forgive him. So
She dealt with it. Yeah. You know, I've actually had women tell me that, one lady's quote was, "No one will ever touch my children, or they will be dead." And I actually said that to a man I suspected of molesting his little girl, because she and her mother stayed with me for a little while. And the little girl used to sneak downstairs and sleep in my bed because it was the only place she felt safe. And one night she was having a nightmare and she was pulling at her shirt, trying to get it down, saying, "No, no, don't touch me." So the next time her father came to pick her up for the weekend, I said, "If I ever find out that you or any of your friends are touching that child, you will be dead." Unfortunately, the mother moved out the next week because he had her scared too. But I'd have killed him. I would have. So help me God, I would have killed him. And I probably still would because I haven't got much life left and it's not big threat for me to go to jail. At least that's my joke. But I still feel that strongly about this dilemma that I would do anything to protect a child.
I understand that. I feel the same way.
And I think maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't have children, was because I didn't want to have to deal with that issue. I don't know. But I've adopted so many of other people's children. So it doesn't really matter. Anyhow,
On that
Paula,
note,
this has been a
on
great
that note,
session.
yeah.
Time. But Terry gave me the oracle cards from the Mary, Queen of the Angels. And the one I pulled up, I think it's appropriate for our closing.
Okay.
You can see the card.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then the back of it, the
Got it.
oracles. I'll read what the oracle says.
Please do.
It's called Feminine. I allow my feminine nature to shine brightly as a valuable part of my identity.
Wow. That is appropriate.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Wow.
So
Thank
what's
you.
next week?
next week we have.
Do we know?
Yes, we have
Okay.
Terry. And she will be moving on with our dowsing practice.
Great.
Moving forward with making choices and healing and finding that unconditional love. And just to close this chapter, which was very difficult at times and had some very, very emotional things come up. As we're finding out, as the veil thins and as we get more and more connected, it is about unconditional love and it is about the power of choice. And I think that we all have it within us to stand up, speak out, and actually be in that forgiveness and loving brightness of what our future holds for us. That's my wish.
X here.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for
right.
being here. I love you all. Have a beautiful week.
Quick
Love you
note,
too.
I've got the link for Paula's book in the chat.
Yes. Save your
Kevin, it would be
chats.
great if that was in the YouTube as well.
Will do.
People to be able to
Thank
click.
Beautiful.
Many blessings.
Thank
Many
you all.
blessings to you all.
Blessings.